Hello everyone and welcome to A Little Bit of Nightmares, where we talk about anything to do with Little Nightmares. Here we encourage each other to delve deeper into this dark, distorted and dangerous world whilst creating interesting theories along the way. So without further ado, let's begin. This video will contain spoilers for the Sounds of Nightmares, so I definitely advise listening to that before watching this video. Not too long ago, Bandai Namco released a new trailer for Little Nightmares 3, titled Friendship, and with it came a closer look at new levels and creatures. Many people have theorized that this new installment will take us back to a place that we have visited before. I too think this, and am desperate to share my ideas with all of you. One addition to the world of Little Nightmares is the Sounds of Nightmares podcast, directed by Toma Joses. This podcast follows Noon, a young girl struggling with disturbing dreams that she describes to Otto, her counsellor, as a form of therapy. These dreams, of course, pull her into the nowhere, aka Little Nightmares, which means the places she visits can also be visited by other children in the nowhere. This is exactly what I believe is happening in certain parts of the trailer. Several times we are given glimpses of areas littered with gears and different pieces of machinery, which Lone Alone are required to navigate or interact with. But when I see these rooms, I can't help but think of the podcast and its first episode titled The Workers in the Walls. In this episode, Noon is forced into a structure she refers to as the Stone Giant. She describes how this place requires constant power, hence the gears. But don't worry, it's not just the gears, because that wouldn't be enough evidence to support my theory. First, let's focus on this area here. Lone Alone are shown pushing some sort of machine to make the gears turn, so we can assume this will be part of a puzzle, where we have to align the gears in the right way to continue or open a door. But it goes deeper than just some puzzle. About 20 minutes into the first episode, Noon mentions how the ceiling is a white clock face. She hears ticking throughout the episode, signalling that the clock has importance as it is heard throughout the entire structure. Going back to this image, from the trailer, we can clearly see that this machine is in a circular shape, and comparing this to the inside of a clock, the similarities are clear. Pausing the video at the right time, we can see that this is definitely not on the ground floor, and seems to be very high up, leading me to believe that this is the other side of the ceiling Noon describes from her dream, and that Lone Alone are pushing the gears to interact with a clock on the other side. Next, let's shift our gaze to this image here. Lone Alone are shown crawling through a passageway, while gears move in the foreground. Behind them is a strange substance on the ground. I originally saw this and thought it was blood or guts, but after rewatching, I drew a connection to the Sounds of Nightmares. Noon meets another child traversing the area. When she gets a closer look at them, she notices their hair covered in black goo. This could be the same substance from the passageway in the trailer. I theorise that this is some sort of oil or grease used to loosen or freshen up the gears, a way of lessening the friction. If this child has been making his way through the passageways, he would have most probably gotten some of this oil on his clothes and in his hair. But if this is the case, why doesn't Noon have any on her after she enters the vents? Well, I believe the simple answer is that the other child has been there for longer. In this time, he will have crossed the substance at least once, whereas Noon was lucky enough not to. Or this goo was located on higher levels to which they were exploring at the time of the first episode. Further evidence is the area they are in. As said in the podcast, they are also forced to crawl through the passageways, as there is no room to stand. As for the workers in the walls, the only evidence I could find for them returning is repeated shadow imagery throughout the trailer and gameplay footage. For example, silhouettes or shadows appearing behind the mirror, and shadows surrounding Lone Alone. Bandai could just be hiding footage and saving it for the real game, but I also thought it was quite interesting how they decided to add the shot of a torch illuminating these hands sticking out of a wall, considering the workers are shown to be irritated or afraid of light. Also, those creepy hands coming out of the pipe could belong to the workers in the walls, as in the podcast, Noon says this.
It moves separately, but as one. I panicked and tucked between a set of levels. In a tight space, my dress got...
A possible hint at the Stone Giant's return is a reference to Alone when this happens in the first episode.
But as I leaned over the edge, distracted, my foot must have knocked a wrench. shadows stared up, and a few began climbing my way. It made sense.
Alone's signature tool is a wrench, so this could be foreshadowing our return to this area. Also, the workers in the walls carry wrenches, so I believe that Alone will have arrived here before the events of Little Nightmares 3, and that this is where she acquired her wrench before eventually meeting Lo. But if this is going to be a full level, it needs a boss, and an old looking woman with pulled back skin that seems to be wearing a dress is a tick in both boxes for the trailer and the podcast.
A tall woman bent over a new project, wearing a familiar dress. Long, heavy chains coming out under its tail. Turning to a pile of scraps, I saw her face. Equally old and young, and her skin stretched back so tight that only her eyes seemed human. I wanted so badly to know what she was building.
Only showing her arms seems like a way to conceal her true identity, both to heighten the fear when you encounter her in real game, and to hide her signature chain attached to her dress. If this woman turns out to be the monster, I will be really happy, as I really liked her episode of The Sounds of Nightmares, and wish to see more of her in the future. So if part of Little Nightmares 3 could be in the same area as The Sounds of Nightmares, where would they both fit into the timeline? I believe Noon was the first child to traverse the stone giant, in the middle region, and on her travels she knocked down a wrench. Later on, Alone also visits the stone giant where she finds the wrench on the floor of lower levels. And then she escaped and found Lo, somewhere else in the nowhere. And then the events of Little Nightmares 3 will take place after both of these things have happened, and Alone will now again have to traverse the stone giant with the assistance of Lo. So what do you think? Could we see a version of the stone giant in Little Nightmares 3, or will we be left to venture through new, unexplored areas? Speaking of new and unexplored areas, you should check out my new series where I take us on a journey into the Funfair level, with the third and final part coming very soon. And that wraps up today's video. Be sure to subscribe, like and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future content. Until next time, this has been A Little Bit of Nightmares.